Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this very special occasion. It's always a wonderful opportunity for us to really celebrate. It's not so much about an evaluation, which has already happened, and Sean has given Birgitta a wonderful evaluation of her project, which I've been through, and I agree wholeheartedly with his assessment of your work.
Good.
Um, so this is really an opportunity in which we celebrate the work of each and every one of our students and the contribution that they have made with that work to the development and advancement of the footprint of logotherapy, which is, of course, of vital importance to all of us. So I'm not going to say too much because Sean was Birgitta's supervisor and mentor throughout this process. So I'd like to hand over to the two of them to say whatever they would like to say about and whatever they would like to share with us about the process which they had together, which was obviously very fruitful and very successful. So thank you, Sean, and thank you, Birgitta. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Okay, so I'll start. Mark, thank you for the opening. Birgitta, you're here today, and it's been an incredible journey. You should be very, very proud of yourself in terms of the journey. I know that you've had some challenges, if we say that, but you know what? You came stronger through your challenges. So I commend you on this, and your work has been outstanding. You've been really, really good about doing whatever needs to be done. And really, it's a journey of exploring and an exploration of yourself and your journey and how you can help other people in their journey. So, without further ado, it's over to you. Thanks, Birgitta.
Right, so I have prepared a presentation about what the paper is about. It is not very long. Feel free to ask any questions. If anyone has something, I don't mind answering. But I'm going to go ahead and share that with you. You should be able to see it on your screens now. Can everyone see it? Okay, fantastic, great. Okay, so to begin with, my paper was officially titled Logotherapy as a foundational component of humanized resilience science and holistic healing for trauma survivors. So this all came about very much out of personal experience and a very sincere interest that I had in the field and in deepening my own understanding of it, not just from all the traditional perspectives, which we easily get from, research, but from specifically a logotherapeutic perspective, which is, of course, something quite different. All right. So I've created a presentation using Notebook LM, which gives you all beautiful images to watch while I drone on. But I do hope that it is an informative presentation. All right. So we have the overall thread or theme of the paper was about integrating neuroscience, resilience science, and logotherapy for a really long-lasting and enduring healing for people who have experienced trauma of any kind. All right, so we begin with the example that Frankel gave us of the of gas being poured or inserted into a container. And his observation was that regardless of how much gas is put into it, the container is always full. So you can add a small volume of gas and it will fill the container. You can add a large volume and it will fill the container. And it's very much the same with suffering. You can have a small amount and it will take up the entirety of your conscience, and the same as a large amount. Right, so This is what makes this paper appropriate for everyone. It really doesn't matter if you have had a traumatic, horrific background. Regardless of who you are, at some stage, you're going to go through um, trauma or adversity of some kind. And regardless of how big or small the experience is, it is definitely going to impact you and take up the entirety of your conscience. People often think of things like abuse or bullying, or sexual or physical assault when it comes to trauma. But honestly, these can be a lot more nuanced. It can be a car accident or chronic health issues. It could be a difficult breakup, or near-death experiences. All of these are things that will have an immense impact on the person, um, after having gone through the experience. All right, so the biology here. And I felt it's important to add this because trauma is not just a psychological event, it's also a physical event. And this is something which I believe logotherapy can actually have an influence on. So it is helpful to just have the basic biological grounding in place. All right, so to begin with, you have your alarm system, your smoke system. This is initiated by the amygdala, a small little structure. You have two, as far as I know, on each side of your head, and they detect the threat. So that's your initial smoke alarm. This then will signal to other structures in your brain, specifically the hypothalamus, which will get the response going, right? So the specific response is release of hormones and natural opioids and cortisol into the bloodstream. This is because we need these things to respond. So you're going to need extra adrenaline in order to move quickly, do whatever you need to do to get away. And the opioids very kindly are supplied in case you are in fact injured. And this gives you a greater chance of improving or of surviving the encounter, whatever it is that happens. All right. Because these are all very, very fast reflexes, the brain the part of the brain that is involved in thinking and analyzing and questioning all of these things is cut off. It is absolutely not in your best interest to think about the situation and analyze the pros and cons when you are being attacked by a bear. There is just no space for that. You need to move immediately. So this is why the brain often doesn't integrate these high stressful or traumatic moments. That part of the brain is just not online. All right. So this results in what we call an issue with the memory. All right. So your normal memory in a good situation is nice and organized. It's logical. There's a beginning, middle, and an end, and it's complete. You feel comfortable and happy with understanding and contextualizing the event. This is an explicit memory. Now, trauma creates implicit memories, which means that it is fragmented, right? Your brain was not online during that time that everything was happening, and you've held on to little bits and pieces, like broken puzzle pieces, trying to patch it together. Um, and these are often very distressing, can become a source of obsession for some people, trying to figure out what happened, trying to remember the details, and trying to understand the situation. There is no closure to that situation. And this is what causes long-term psychological and physiological damage. The brain is not able to close that event. It feels unsafe. And so the stress response continues, and long-term damage is a very real risk. All right. So people have looked at trauma for a very, very long time. It's not new. Traditional therapy has approached people in a sort of doctor and client way. So we have the doctor, who is a person of great authority and who is able to tell you what is wrong with you and take this medication and you will be better. Using this approach, a lot of traditional therapy has said, oh, I see you drink excessive amounts of alcohol. So clearly you have a substance abuse disorder. And oh, you have a tendency to self-harm. You must have borderline personality disorder. Or you're experiencing depression, clearly a depressive disorder. And these are not necessarily the case. Trauma-informed therapy is aware that a survivor will make use of many different tactics to stay afloat. All right. Sometimes these are unhealthy, right? So a survivor may turn to drinking to cope. They may turn to self-harm, or they may fall into depression. This does not mean that they have disorders of substance abuse, or these are not the issue in themselves. They are extensions of a much deeper problem, which is the unresolved trauma. So trauma-informed therapy views these symptoms as, in fact, adaptive coping mechanisms, and focuses on integrating the client into the healing or into the therapeutic approach. So instead of a professional and someone in a lower position asking for advice, the trauma-informed therapist comes alongside and says, all right, this is your process, this is your journey, and we're going to do it together. And therapy is structured around that. All right. So, all right, there you go. I just lost visual for a second. All right. So trauma, attachment, and memory. Trauma inherently breaks our ability to connect with other people and even with ourselves. All right. And as we've seen, it messes with your ability to memorize or to form complete memories of certain events. All right. So if you're going into a trauma-informed therapy process, the first step is going to be to make the person safe. All right. That's always your first priority. You want them to be able to manage their own emotions, their own responses. We're going to want them to start building connections again with other people. And it might just be a few people. It might just be one person. It might just be the therapist. But we want them to start connecting, reaching out, and feeling connected with other people. This is an essential part of their support system and their process going forward. Once the client is feeling safer, they're more able to cope with their physical reactions or physical responses and symptoms, you can move on to the next part of the therapy, which is reconsolidating the memories. So we're basically going to take these memories out of storage very briefly, and we're going to have a look at them and say, okay, when this event happened, I formed this and this and this thought or belief, right? So I was assaulted, and my belief was I'm helpless, and I'm a victim, and I'm powerless. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is reevaluate those beliefs. So we're going to say, okay, is that really the case? Are you in fact powerless? Are you in fact helpless? Is this actually the case? And you can use different techniques to help the client come to a realization that actually they are not those emotions that they experienced in that moment. They are beyond those emotions and those beliefs that they have formed. So we're then going to create new meaning experiences. We're going to say, all right, how about we think of the fact that we survived this? How amazing is that? You actually made it through. You didn't succumb to what was bothering, to, what happened to you. You didn't give up. You didn't retreat from the world and refuse to ever come out. The fact that you are here means that you have survived, you have pushed through. So let's create new meaning in this event. Let's create a new interpretation of the event. All right. You're then going to describe the event using these new lenses that you have now created. And finally, you start to integrate that. So when you talk about the event, you talk about it in terms of these lenses that you have created, this way that you now look at the situation, which is more positive, more empowering, and more meaningful. Right. And at the end of this therapeutic process, we want to prepare people for going forward. Doesn't help you just deal with the past. You want to have something so that going forward, you can cope with the things that come your way, because they will. There will be frustrations, there will be hardships, there will be trials, there will be suffering. And you want someone to feel like they have the toolkit to manage this going forward. All right, give me a second. There you go. All right. So something I looked at specifically was the Transcending Trauma Project. And I looked at this because I'm trying to bring logotherapy and the spiritual dimension into trauma and understanding of trauma. All right, this project was founded by some people who looked at the situation and went, you know what? What we read in literature is not lining up with what we see in trauma survivors when we go and speak to them. They spoke specifically to people who had survived the Holocaust, who had been through prisoner of war experiences, who'd been through natural disasters, people who'd been through absolute, like really, really difficult times. So there's no denying they had a traumatic experience. You cannot paint it any other way, right? And they had to look at these people and spoke to them and said, we're actually finding that instead of just, reconsolidating our memories and taking a different attitude towards it, a key factor is finding meaning, and a sense of internal control for the person or for the people who had experienced these things. Right. And when they start to look at this, you can start to reconstruct things. So you can say, all right, we understand this was the experience and there's no denying the horror of it. What is something that you can use to bridge the experience that you have or that happened with your life going forward? Right. So finding meaning in those experiences basically helped people to form a connection between the past and the future that they want to build. Okay. So I looked into holistic healing, basically because we're trying to integrate, because we are aiming to integrate the spirit. Okay, so traditional therapy, the ones that we have discussed, the trauma-informed therapy and such, they focus on your mind and body. This is something that psychology loves to do because they have I think, a chip on their shoulder and want to prove to all the other hard sciences that they are, in fact, a science. And in the process, we have lost an enormous part of the human being. We've lost the essence of the human being. So holistic therapy takes this back into account. Holistic therapy doesn't necessarily speak about the spirit. It uses different words. So some forms will talk about energy, and some will talk about chi, and some will talk about the soul, and some will talk about the essence. They all mean the same thing, which is that fundamental part of yourself that connects you to yourself and to the world around you, right? It is that inherent, intrinsic core. And whatever name you use for it, in our case, we use the word spirit. It is present in, these holistic healing practices, all right? And some practices are more controversial for us to accept, things like tremoring or perhaps doing I don't know if breath work is really something that's hard, but certainly something like yoga or meditation is something that most people feel uncomfortable with. But we can see through research that these acceptances or accepting of these practices and practicing of these techniques does really have results. So you might not like it, it might make you feel uncomfortable. Unfortunately, it is still beneficial, right? So this proves to us that there is an absolute connection between the body, the mind, and the spirit. Okay. So what we're hoping for with this is to build our resilience. Okay. So discussing resilience is an absolute key part of understanding trauma. You cannot have one without the other. They are related, two sides of the same coin almost. All right. As we know that trauma is going to be inevitable and happen to everyone eventually at some stage, resilience is also inevitable. It is universal and it is something that is not limited to only a few people. All right. Resilience is comprised of many different things, and it took up quite a large part of the paper just to explain a basic definition of resilience, because it's a lot more complicated than we think. Often we think, bouncing back. That's the first thing that comes to people's minds, resilience, and you bounce back. But it's so much more than that. It's personal characteristics. It's emotional regulation. It's things like taking responsibility, being adaptable. It's factors like education, culture, ethnicity, socioeconomic status. Your physical environment has also been proven to actually affect your resilience. Poorer environments create a poorer state of mind. Your social support is a huge part of resilience. And it's often the part that I think suffers the most from trauma, because it's the first thing you let go is your connections to other people. You either struggle to form those connections to begin with, or you lose trust in the security of those connections. And it is an enormous part of resilience. Of course, there's also the biological aspects of resilience, which was a fascinating thing to research. I really enjoyed seeing how the body actually gears you towards resilience. It is designed to help you survive, to help you thrive, and to help you endure or come through difficult circumstances. One of these things is neuroplasticity, which I'll talk about a little bit later. All right. So the resilience that we're hoping for is not just a few personal traits that sound good or some ordinary abilities. We're hoping for something that actually brings you forward, right? Because the fact is, there is no bouncing back. You can't have an experience, a traumatic experience, and come back the way you were. That's impossible. The only possible thing is to come back a different and hopefully a better person. This is post-traumatic growth that we see quite beautifully depicted on the picture here. All right. So getting into neuroscience and also different ways of processing trauma and of building resilience or exercising resilience. All right. The first process, and this is the one that I think most people would attach logotherapy to, is the top-down process. So this is thought-based. It's about changing your frame of mind. It's about changing the story, like we saw with the trauma-informed therapy. It's about challenging the assumptions. It's a very cognitive exercise. And this is, in fact, very helpful and I think, quite frankly, essential to understanding and processing trauma. But there is another way, and that is the bottom-up process. That is giving your body experiences of safety so that you can actually realize, okay, this is over. It is done. I have come through this event. right? It is noticing your physical sensations. It's taking an appreciation for or um, an intentional awareness of the world around you and almost a type of mindfulness. Okay, I'm not going to divulge or go into the 5 intelligences of resilience because we are on a timer. Okay. So how can resilience be humanized? We've seen resilience looks at a lot of things. It looks at your brain and the ability of the brain to adapt. It looks at your personal characteristics and things you can learn to do better. It looks at your social support system, and all of this is fantastic. But this all assumes that we're just looking at the body and the mind, as traditional science does. So let's humanize this. Let's bring logotherapy and the spirit into this. All right. And by doing this, we change the core understanding of what resilience is. All right. If we were to be only focused on the biology, then we are simple slaves to instinct. All right. If it was just psychology, we would simply be products of conditioning. But adding the spiritual dimension opens us up to possibilities, to freedom, to responsibility, accountability, and all the other wonderful things that we will continue to explore. All right. So the spiritual dimension, as you can see really nicely here, overarches the biological and the psychological dimensions, which is really the foundation of what resilience or a humanized resilience science would be. It would be something that is encompassed by logotherapy and by an understanding of the human spirit. Okay. So logotherapy states that suffering with no reason whatsoever equals despair. We know this. If we exercise and we have painful muscles, just because then it hurts. But if we exercise because we're trying to build strength and we have painful muscles, we can deal with that. All right. So suffering with meaning creates manageable challenges. All right. And one of the things we do is we can, or the three avenues to meaning. The first being experiences. All right. These can be very, very simple. And I want to mention very briefly my small tangent about the 3 avenues to meaning. So the first one, experiences, they're very simple. They're very basic appreciation of the world. It's, oh, that cup of coffee was amazing. Or did you see that sunset? Frankel wrote about this in his work, that people came out of their huts to look at the beautiful sunset beyond the bars, right? This was something that was fundamentally enriching and meaningful for the people who were in the situation, right? The second is actions or creativity. It's things you do. So it's giving back to the world. It could also be something as simple as exercising, making yourself do some deep breathing, doing things that engage you with the world around you. And finally, the attitude, which is something very, very popular in logotherapy, um, is all right, the situation is terrible and it cannot be changed, but I still choose to exercise gratitude or to think about this differently. Instead of thinking of this as the end of the road, think of it as a new beginning, right? So changing your attitude. I find or have found in a lot of the logotherapeutic literature that people are very fixated on the cognitive aspect of logotherapy. So people are very taken up with the attitudinal shift, with just, with changing your way of thinking or changing your thinking process. And there is so much value in that. And honestly, it's an enormously valuable part of finding meaning. But it does discount the simple meaningfulness of a comfortable blanket or, just getting a hug from someone who means a lot to you. And these are 2/3 of our avenues of meaning. They definitely deserve to be, I think, acknowledged a lot more. I've seen some literature that actually says logotherapy is unavailable to people who are, say, senile or who have limited cognitive abilities. And this to me is very sad because if that were the case, logotherapy would just be another cognitive therapy, right? We cannot say that human beings are spiritual, but unfortunately, you just can't access the spirit unless you're smart enough, all right? So the value of basic experiences and basic engagement with the world around you really, really is, I think, something that we can embrace a lot more. And these are things that really build resilience, right? It's the movement, it's the breathing, it's the connection with other people. These are fundamental aspects of resilient science. All right. So self-regulation, a huge thing in resilient science, being able to manage your own thoughts and your own emotions. Now, often when things go wrong, we need to, in a way, deal with ourselves. Okay. Like, I can see I'm falling apart here. What am I going to do about this? All right. And these are these cognitive exercises that we use in logotherapy. So, one of the easy ones is to self-distance. So, you can say, all right, I am not part of this. I am not this experience. To distance yourself and look at it from a bird's eye view. Another way to deal with yourself is to say, all right, I'm experiencing this. I can rise above this, right? So self-transcendence. It's about not being trapped in that experience, but rather allow or understanding that you are able to transcend or rise above the situation. Okay. Logotherapy techniques, specifically dereflection and paradoxical intention, as they are often quoted as the main techniques of logotherapy. Paradoxical intention, fantastic for dealing with the unbreakable cycle of the stress response. So it's not going to take the stress response away, right? Because you can't do that. Your body is wired to survive. But you can take a different approach to it. So the example I used in my paper was someone who is terrified of spiders, right? And they are simply they're horrified to go outside. They are paranoid about you know, keeping their house spotlessly clean and so on. All right. And if they see a spider, they experience physical symptoms. Their palms become clammy, they struggle to breathe, they shake, all the stress symptoms that we see from the panic response. All right. Paradoxical intention comes in here, and we use the humor or the person's own ability to see I don't want to say the ridiculousness because that can be trivializing, but to see the fact that the fear can be irrational, right? And you have to use the person's consent. They have to be completely on board with this and understand what this is about. But using this, you can say, all right, how about this? If you can find a spider that is dressed in army gear and has a little machine gun and a marine hairdo and preferably with body armor. If you ever see the spider hopping around on the back of your couch going, get to the chopper, then let me know because we're splitting the proceeds that you make off of that spider. Okay, that spider is super, super valuable and we can totally split the proceeds. All right. This gives the person the advantage that the next time they look at a spider, they feel that stress response, okay? Clammy hands, can't breathe. And they look at it and go, oh, it's so small and it has no body armor. This is a disappointment of a spider. I'm not going to make anything off of this, you know. And it breaks the fear cycle. It doesn't take away the stress response, but it helps with how you deal with with the stress response. All right. Another thing you can do when people are, or when a person is prone to ruminating, brooding, thinking about the same thing over and over. Why did I let this happen? How could this have happened? All right. So one of the things we can do is say, all right, here's a detour for you. Okay. It's called de-reflection. So instead of getting self-obsessed and thinking about these things over and over and over, and the negative things and the difficulties and the challenges. Hey, how about we have a look at something else? What about the possibilities that we haven't explored? What if this goes right? What if it's not a disaster? What if this leads to other exciting opportunities? What if this helps us to grow as a person? Other things that we had not considered before. This is de-reflection. So shifting your focus away from the broodiness and the cloud of gloom that you were drowned in. All right. So Lucas spoke about a fantastic way to integrate logotherapy into basically anything, because as we know, logotherapy is widely applicable to all sorts of practices. But infusing logotherapy specifically into trauma and trauma-informed therapy. All right, and I want to just grab my notes here because they are, in fact, pretty important. Okay. Lucas addresses the three dimensions of the human being. Okay, so if your basic premise is there are three dimensions, all right, we have a spirit, we have a body, and we have a mind. All right, and she talks about the different ways in which these can be integrated together. All right, so or treated. So in our biological dimension, we have instinct. Okay, you cannot train instinct, you cannot manipulate instinct. If you have a disease, you should treat it medically. The biology is what it is. It is not changeable by some wishful thinking or positive thinking or any other cognitive process that you might try. All right. The psychological dimension is different. It is very much a result of conditioning. Okay, so you have a situation or an experience, and depending on the result, you will either behave the same or behave differently next time. This is very easy to manipulate as well. We can create the placebo effect. We can change the way a person views something by how we express it or how we present it to them, right? So our psychological dimension is very easily manipulated, all right? Then we have the spirit. The spirit is above this, right? The spirit is encompassing above the biological and psychological dimensions. And this is, for this reason, it is completely free of those limitations. Okay, so you are still free to choose your attitude, or in fact, to choose whether you will be mindful to a situation or an experience or anything of the sort. It is the one state where you don't want homeostasis. Okay, so in the body, yes, you want things to be stable. You don't want your blood pressure to be all over the place. You don't want your sugar levels to be all over the place. Psychologically, we prefer to be stable. We prefer to not have extreme mood swings and to, vary our behaviors drastically. But in the spiritual dimension, we do not want homeostasis. We don't want things to be staying the same. We want to have something to strive towards, all right? So we're looking for that goal or that openness to life and to experience in the spiritual dimension. And so you can see how you can then treat these three different dimensions, treat the body in the way it needs to be treated with medication, good diet, exercise, what have you. Psychologically, have good mental hygiene, be mindful of your thought patterns and your behaviors, habits, and so on. And in the spirit, realize that you have freedom to actually choose to explore new possibilities, to do new things. In this way, you can integrate logotherapy into pretty much anything you like. Right. Finally, the research I did, right? The research was aimed at answering two basic questions, right? The first one, is meaning an essential component of resilience? And the second one, can humanized resilience science be beneficial to the holistic healing of trauma survivors? Okay. So I think we have seen very, very clearly that a humanized resilience science is immensely beneficial to anyone who has ever had to exercise resilience. Okay. The research that I did was a questionnaire, a survey that I sent out to random participants with 10 questions. The first four were taken from the purpose in life questionnaire, which is very commonly used in logotherapy studies. And the others were focused on specifically on trauma and finding meaning in trauma. All right, and the results from this showed that 76% of people believe that their suffering had caused them to grow as a person. And remember, these are not people who've been through logotherapy or who have been through therapy that I even know of. These are random participants. 72% believe that they are always free to choose their attitude. Interestingly, a very low amount, less than 50%, believe that they are able to choose their actions, which leads us to consider that people might feel more able to control their internal response as opposed to the external response. So you can choose your own thoughts, your own attitudes, your own way, but you cannot necessarily choose your own actions, right? So this is an interesting discrepancy that I found, which surprised me, to be honest. 60% strongly believe that their suffering and trauma could be meaningful. And I think that really goes to show how incredibly valuable meaning and the search for meaning is in trauma therapy, trauma-informed therapy, and also in our understanding of resilience. It is undeniably a foundational aspect of resilience science. I think there's a good, strong case to humanize resilience science and a very good case to be made for the benefit of humanized resilience science in trauma therapy. Good. So that is it. Thank you so much. That felt very long. I hope you're all still okay.
Well, Birgitta, you've already had my marking memorandum, but while to see the presentation is unbelievable. You know how much I love the work that you do. It is professional. There's absolutely nothing to say about the work. I would like you just to tell the audience about your evidence, the literature. So just give us maybe 3 or 4 specific influences you had of specific literature research.
Oh, all right. So I took a lot from, in terms of the resilience science, I took a lot from the authors Graham, who produced a beautiful amount of information on the different aspects of resilience, which I found to be extremely helpful. I referred a lot to the older works of Lucas in the logotherapy aspect. I find that she has a rich amount of techniques and ideas that are not very commonly out there. Certainly, they weren't when I did my basic training. They weren't out, commonly known or used. So I made drew a lot from her. And I used a lot from Bessel van Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score, on the effects of trauma, psychologically, physically, and obviously trauma counseling, how to approach that. So those were three very big influences for me throughout the paper.
The other question that I wanted to ask you, just share with us very briefly about your practical work that you've done, specifically in TRT.
TRT in
Trauma-informed therapy. Have you actually done some have you done some cases? Have you actually done some workshops? Have you had some clients, patients related to that? And have you actually done it? And if you have, just give us a brief idea of how many you've done it with, and just give us a very brief idea of the outcome.
All right. So I have not had official clients and I have not yet had workshops. I'm hoping to develop the material that I've now created to create workshops. I have had a lot of exposure to people who have been through trauma, right? Partly because of my own experiences. You just form certain circles of people who've been there, done that. And this has absolutely made a big difference in my ability to understand and to empathize with people going through this. And the logotherapy specifically has given me a framework for approaching it, which I definitely would not have had otherwise. Um, it's easy when it's, not a paying client, someone that you know who's gone through traumatic things, to just ruminate and go, oh yeah, I've been there and it was awful. But to be able to use the logotherapeutic approach or framework meant that you could add different things to their conversation. So you could say, you know what, I never in my life thought I would be writing a thesis paper on the spiritual aspect of overcoming trauma. I never thought that was going to happen. 10 years ago, this was not something I was interested in. Um, so it allows you to bring different perspectives into those conversations. But no, I have not had official clients yet. It is something I'm looking to possibly do in the future, and workshops, absolutely. I feel like there's a lot of good material here for workshops for people learning to deal with their own clients or just dealing with their own experiences.
And my last comment or question is about trauma in animals. Have you been so close to your heart? Have you done anything about trauma in animals?
Absolutely. So that's probably where a large part of this started. I actually learned about some of the techniques going to clinics, learning about how to help animals deal with trauma in their own bodies and in their own experiences. And this formed an enormous part of my foundation, understanding not only what trauma does, but also the distinction between the animal response to trauma and the potential human response to trauma. So it was absolutely invaluable. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Birgitta. I have no more words except to congratulate you and Mark on making the recommendation that we award her certificates. Thank you. All right, Birgitta, seems like everybody is I think enamored with your beautiful presentation, the beautiful explanation. It really is great. It's professional. Um, all the stuff that you do is just so close to my heart as well. And you did it so well. I love your slides. Blew me away as always. but always your creative work is always good, but your brain's also good. So yeah, congratulations on all of that, and it's a journey that is well done. Buy me a chapter to go forward, and looking forward to the next chapter related to this. I know it's not the end for you, and I encourage you to draw on this into the next chapter. Congratulations, well done, and great for the logotherapy world to know that logotherapy can be woven into any fabric across all modalities, whatever it may be. And I think one of the important aspects in the world right now is that they need modalities and things that you do specifically in trauma. And not only just trauma, but the understanding of resilience. And you spoke about resilience and building resilience. It's not about doing the actual saying, well, I have got the resilience. It's building the resilience and maintaining it in the best way that you can. I call it recalibration. So it's the recalibration of what it is, and the cogs turn in terms of building it. And the more momentum you get in being able to build resilience, the easier it's going to be to meet and beat the challenges. So congratulations. Mark, are you there? No. Anyway, congratulations. Well
Yes,
done.
yes, I'm here. Sorry, I've
Okay,
managed to
please go
rejoin.
ahead, Mark. I was going to end.
No, just did you finish off what you wanted to say, Sean?
Finish totally, Mark. So if you want to end off, you may.
Okay. All right, Birgitta, thank you so much. I will be going through the project in much greater detail, but thank you for your wonderful presentation. I think you captured the gist of what you have in your paper. And I think the contribution that you're making to logotherapy is hugely valuable, particularly because it comes so much from your personal experience. And this is the legacy that Frankel left us to take therapy and adapt it and apply it in all manner of areas and ways in the world. But I think those that grow out of the unique experience of an individual are the ones that are the most valuable. So I'd like to just congratulate both you and Sean on a wonderful journey together, which has produced, I think, a very, very important piece of work, which I hope that you will be taking further. And just in case anybody doesn't know, Birgitta has been awarded a mark, which is a pass with distinction. In fact, 95% for the work which she has done. I wish to congratulate her and officially say, Birgitta, you have earned the certification of a professional logotherapy course, and we will be getting your certificate to you within the next few days. So congratulations on all your hard work. Well done. And I'd just also like to say at this point, just once again, the enormous gratitude we have for the wonderful work that you're doing for us in social media, your Facebook posts and all of those things. They do make a wonderful and are making a wonderful difference to things at the Institute, and you have our enormous gratitude for that. So thank you, Birgitta. Congratulations and well done.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to everybody for being here to support Birgitta. It's wonderful to see that people are accompanying her on her journey with love and support. And we hope that this won't be the end of the road, that we'll continue to be working with us and moving forward with us as we continue to spread the word of logotherapy. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful evening, unless, Birgitta, there's anything else you'd like to say.
Well done, Birgitta.
Thanks, Dad.
That's the most important comment of the evening.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. The one I've been waiting for.
Yeah, always.
There you go. Well done.
Congrats.
Thank you, Pat. It's so lovely to see you.
Oh, I love you. And lovely to see your families all here as well. It's wonderful.
Yes, it is. It's so special. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the support. Really, really.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Sean.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.